would you do if the one person you looked up to, trusted, and admired suddenly blurred the line between teacher and something far more dangerous? This isn't just a story about sports. It's about late nights, closed doors, and a love that shouldn't exist, but refuses to be denied. Welcome to today's BL webtoon love story, a yaoi romance manhwa where the gym becomes a battlefield of hearts. The setting is simple, a high school gym filled with echoing footsteps, the faint smell of sweat, and the relentless sound of basketballs hitting polished wood. Our protagonist, Jae-min, a quiet, hard-working student who never stands out. He isn't the star of the team, not the loudest in class, not the kind of boy you'd expect to be the center of a BL manhwa romance. But that's exactly why this story begins with him. The gym had its own heartbeat, the sound of sneakers squeaking across polished wood, the heavy thud of a basketball hitting the rim, bouncing, rolling away into silence, the faint echo of laughter from teammates long gone. And when all of that faded, there was the hum of the fluorescent lights, flickering faintly as though even they were tired after a long day. For most students, the gym was just a place to sweat, to practice, to play. But for Jae-min, it was different. It was a kind of refuge. He wasn't the loudest boy on the team. He wasn't the tallest, the strongest, or the one who scored the winning baskets. No one cheered his name from the stands, and maybe that was why. When practice ended and everyone else rushed to the locker room, Jae-min lingered. He stayed behind, picking up the stray basketballs left to roll into the corners. He folded the towels discarded carelessly on the benches. He swept the floor when no one was watching. Not because he was told to, not because anyone would notice, but because it gave him something to do with his hands, something steady, reliable. Because here, in the quiet hum of the empty gym, he could breathe. And sometimes, it almost felt like home. And then, of course, there was Coach Seo-jun. To the rest of the world, he was the kind of man who didn't need to try to command attention. He simply walked into a room and people straightened up. Tall, broad-shouldered, the sharp lines of his jaw softened only by the stray smile that slipped through when he wasn't thinking about it. His voice, low and firm, carried easily across the court, strict, disciplined, uncompromising. Most people only saw one version of Coach Seo-jun, the sharp voice, the commanding presence, the no-nonsense way he demanded precision from his players. To them, he was strict, unyielding, almost cold at times. He was the kind of man people followed because they had to, because respect wasn't requested. It was required. But Jae-min noticed the details. He noticed the way Seo-jun's hand would close gently around a forgotten water bottle, not tossing it carelessly into the trash, but placing it neatly on the bench, as though it still mattered. He noticed the subtle shift in his tone when a first year stumbled over drills, less cutting, more encouraging, quiet enough that no one else would hear. And he noticed the pauses, the way Seo-jun's gaze lingered on the players when they were too exhausted to hide it. He'd give them just a little extra rest, just enough that they could recover without feeling weak. And then, with a nod, he'd push them forward again as if to say, I see you, I know you're tired, but I believe you can do more. Most of all, Jae-min noticed the ritual at the end of every practice. Seo-jun never left first. Even after the drills were done, the whistles silenced, the players streaming out with sweaty laughter and slaps on the back, Seo-jun lingered, standing near the exit, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning the room. He never locked up until the last boy had left safely. It was small, almost invisible, but to Jae-min, It was everything, because that was the side no one talked about, the man beneath the authority, beneath the hard edges, the one who cared enough to wait. And Jae-min, quiet as he was, saw it all. For Jae-min, those details meant more than he could admit. Maybe it was because he lived in the details himself. He wasn't the star player, the one everyone cheered for. He wasn't the loud voice in the locker room cracking jokes and filling the air with easy confidence. He was the boy who noticed when the basketball rack wobbled because someone hadn't pushed it back properly. The boy who folded the towels into even stacks when everyone else left them in a messy pile. The boy who stayed late, not because anyone asked him to, but because it gave him a reason to linger in a place where he felt seen. Or maybe it wasn't the gym that made him feel seen. Maybe it was Seo-jun. There was one evening near the end of a grueling week when practice had run long. The gym was emptying fast, players chattering about late-night snacks and homework they hadn't done. Jae-min hung back as usual, quietly gathering basketballs that rolled into the shadows. When he straightened, Seo-jun was there, standing by the door, waiting, clipboard tucked under his arm, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, sharp, steady, were fixed on Jae-min. "You're always the last one," Seo-jun said. His voice wasn't accusing, just curious. Jae-min froze for a second, fingers tightening around the ball in his hands. I don't mind staying." Seo-jun tilted his head slightly. "You like cleaning up after everyone else?" The question wasn't harsh, but Jae-min still felt heat crawl up the back of his neck. He wanted to explain, to tell him that the silence felt safe, that the empty gym was easier to exist in than the noisy dorms or crowded hallways. But the words wouldn't come. So instead, he just said softly, "It's quiet." And for the first time, Jae-min swore he saw it. The faintest curve at the corner of Seo-jun's mouth, a smile, small, almost hidden. "You're different," Seo-jun said. Then he pushed off the wall, crossed the court, and picked up a stray basketball himself, dropping it into the rack with a hollow thud. It was such a simple act, ordinary, forgettable. But to Jae-min, it was like the air had shifted, because in that moment, he realized something he hadn't dared to before. Seo-jun noticed him too. After that night, Jae-min couldn't stop noticing more. The way Seo-jun's jacket would slip from his shoulders when he thought no one was looking, exhaustion catching up with him. The way he leaned against the bleachers for a moment too long after dismissing practice, rubbing at the back of his neck as though the weight of responsibility pressed heavier some days, and once, just once, Jae-min caught him laughing. It wasn't the polite chuckle he gave parents or the forced one when players cracked jokes. It was real. A deep, full laugh that escaped unexpectedly when a ball ricocheted off the rim and startled one of the assistant coaches. The sound filled the gym, warm and unguarded. It was the kind of laugh that lodged itself in Jae-min's chest and refused to leave. That was the problem, wasn't it? The more Jae-min noticed, the harder it became to look away, because Coach Seo-jun wasn't supposed to be anything more than a figure of authority, a mentor, a man set apart by years and distance. But the more Jae-min lingered after practice, sweeping floors and stacking towels, the more those invisible lines blurred. What was he supposed to do with the way his heart picked up when Seo-jun leaned over to demonstrate a stance, the warmth of his hand steadying Jae-min's elbow? What was he supposed to do with the way his chest tightened when those dark eyes lingered just a moment too long, like they were searching for something Jae-min couldn't name? What was he supposed to do with the fact that he wanted it, that attention, that weight That quiet acknowledgement that said, I see you, even when no one else does. Most people only saw the strict coach, the whistle, the commands, the posture that never wavered. But Jae-min saw the man who picked up after others, who let his players breathe when they were too close to breaking, who stayed behind until the last boy left. And maybe, just maybe, that was why Jae-min couldn't stop coming back. Because for someone who had spent so long trying to disappear, being noticed by someone like Seo-jun felt like standing in the center of the court under a spotlight. Terrifying, exhilarating, unforgettable. And the scariest part? Jae-min wasn't sure he wanted to step out of it. Little things, quiet things, things that told Jae-min that beneath the sharp exterior, there was someone else, someone who cared more than he let on. If this were a page out of a yaoi manga, Seo-jun would be the archetype, the older man, the mentor, the one drawn with clean lines and a gaze that could pierce right through you, the one you were supposed to look up to, not think about in any other way. At first, their worlds didn't collide, not really. Jae-min existed on the periphery, sweeping floors, stacking balls into the wire cages, folding towels. He was a shadow at the edge of the court, present but unnoticed, or so he thought. The first time Seo-jun spoke to him outside of practice, it was so ordinary, Jae-min almost convinced himself he imagined it. You always stay late. Jae-min froze, caught in the act of tucking a stray towel under his arm. He turned, startled, to find Seo-jun leaning against the doorway, arms crossed over his chest, his expression unreadable. I just... Jae-min stammered, gripping the towel tighter. Seo-jun raised an eyebrow. You like cleaning up after everyone else? Jae-min flushed, shaking his head quickly. No, I don't mind. It's quiet. For a moment, Seo-jun studied him. Really studied him. Jae-min felt pinned in place under that gaze like a butterfly caught beneath glass. And then, unexpectedly, Seo-jun chuckled. Just a small sound, low and warm. You're different. He pushed off the doorframe, walked across the court with that controlled, easy stride, and began picking up stray basketballs with him. Jae-min didn't say anything. He couldn't. His throat was too tight, his heart thundering in his chest. But that was the night everything changed. From then on, it wasn't just Jae-min in the gym after hours. Sometimes Seo-jun stayed too. Not because he had to. He could have left the moment practice ended, clipboard under his arm, keys jingling as he locked up. That was what most coaches did. But Seo-jun wasn't most coaches. Sometimes he lingered, just as Jae-min did. At first, it felt accidental, like coincidence. Jae-min would be sweeping along the far end of the court, and Seo-jun would still be at his desk, flipping through notes, jotting down observations, sketching out drills for the next day. But the more it happened, the less it felt like chance. And the more it happened, the more Jae-min noticed how different those moments felt. On some evenings, Seo-jun's voice would cut gently through the silence. Your elbow, he'd murmur, stepping closer. Adjusting Jae-min's shooting form with practiced hands, his palm brushed against Jae-min's skin as he nudged the angle of his arm firm yet careful, as if he knew exactly how much pressure to apply. Like this, Seo-jun would say, lifting his own arm in one fluid motion, the ball leaving his fingertips in a perfect arc. It always landed with a satisfying swish that echoed in the empty gym. Jae-min would try to mimic him, heart thundering in his chest, but it was never just about basketball. Not anymore. Because every correction came with proximity. Every quiet instruction came with warmth. And every time Seo-jun leaned close enough that his voice, brushed against Jamin's ear. It felt like something too intimate, too dangerous to name. And yet, Jamin craved it. He lived for it. Other times, there were no words at all. Seojun would settle at his desk, pen scratching lightly across paper, posture slightly hunched in thought. Jamin would move quietly across the court, broom in hand sweeping fallen dust into neat lines. The sound of bristles against polished wood filled the air steady and grounding. Silence shouldn't have felt like connection. But with Seojun, it did. It was the kind of silence that wrapped around them, unbroken, yet never uncomfortable, as if their presence alone was enough, as if words weren't necessary to acknowledge the invisible tether strung tight between them. Sometimes Jamin caught himself slowing down, dragging out the simple task of sweeping just to stretch the moment. He'd pretend to miss a spot, circling back, letting the minutes spill longer than they should. Because the truth was, he didn't want the silence to end. He didn't want the night to end. There were nights when Seojun surprised him, like the time Jamin lingered by the free throw line, ball in hand, staring at the hoop as if it held answers he couldn't reach. He thought Seojun was buried in his notes. But then came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, crossing the court. "Show me," Seojun said simply. Jamin blinked. "Show you how you shoot." So Jamin did. He lifted the ball, focused, released. The ball clanged off the rim and bounced away. Seojun didn't criticize. He didn't sigh or scold. He just stepped behind Jamin, close enough that Jamin felt the brush of his breath along the side of his neck. "Again," he said softly. Seojun's hands came up, large and sure, settling lightly over Jamin's, guiding, correcting, teaching. But to Jamin, it felt like something more, something fragile and dangerous, like standing on the edge of a cliff. "Don't think about the hoop," Seojun murmured. "Think about the release, smooth, controlled, let it go." The ball left Jamin's hands. This time it swished clean through the net. A rush of pride swelled in his chest, but stronger than pride was the awareness of Seojun's hands still on his, steady, lingering. Neither of them moved for a breath too long. The sound of the ball bouncing away seemed distant compared to the thrum of blood in Jamin's ears. And then, just as suddenly, Seojun pulled back. "Better," he said. His voice was even, unreadable, but his eyes, when Jamin dared to meet them, carried something unspoken, something Jamin didn't have the courage to name. There were also the quiet evenings where they existed in a rhythm so natural it startled Jamin. Seojun scribbling notes, Jamin sweeping, the squeak of sneakers when Jamin retrieved a stray ball, the faint creak of Seojun's chair as he leaned back, stretching tired muscles. It was ordinary. It was simple. But in its simplicity, it felt like belonging. Sometimes Seojun would break the silence with a question, not about basketball, but about life. "Do you always stay late?" he asked once, glancing up from his desk. "Yes," Jamin answered softly. "It's quieter." Seojun nodded, as if that answer made perfect sense. "The gym feels different when it's empty, doesn't it?" Jamin hesitated, then nodded, "Like it's safer." Seojun's gaze lingered on him for a moment, too long, before returning to his papers. But Jamin carried that look home with him, replaying it again and again, wondering if he imagined the gentleness in it. The danger was how easy it became, how natural it felt to exist in those after-hour shadows, to fall into a world that belonged only to the two of them. It should have been strange. A coach and a player, staying late, sharing moments that blurred the boundaries between professional and personal. It should have felt wrong, but it didn't. If anything, it felt inevitable. One night, rain hammered against the gym windows, drowning the world outside in streaks of silver. Practice had ended early, most of the team rushing out with jackets pulled over their heads, laughing at the storm. But Jaemin stayed. He always stayed. This time, Seojun didn't retreat to his desk. Instead, he picked up a broom of his own, walking over to Jaemin with a rare, quiet smile. "You don't have to do all the work yourself," he said. The sight of him, stoic, composed Seojun, holding a broom, made Jaemin's throat tighten. He tried to laugh, but it came out soft, breathless. "You'll ruin your image." For the briefest second, Seojun's lips curved into something playful. "Maybe my image needs ruining." The words hung in the air, heavier than they should have. Together they swept in silence, side by side, the storm outside raging louder than the soft scrape of bristles on wood. But inside, the air felt charged, thick with everything they weren't saying. And when their hands brushed, just lightly, accidentally, neither of them pulled away. That was how it always was. Small touches, lingering silences, glances that lasted a beat too long, little things that shouldn't mean anything, little things that meant everything. Jaemin told himself it was harmless, that it was all in his head, that Seojun was just being a coach, just being kind. But in the stillness of the gym, with the echo of their footsteps and the hum of the lights above, it was impossible to ignore the truth pressing at the edges of his chest. He didn't just admire Seojun, he wanted him. And maybe, just maybe, Seojun wanted him too. Because sometimes, when the night grew too quiet and the shadows stretched long, Jaemin would look up and catch Seojun watching him. Not the way a coach watched a player. Not the way an adult watched over responsibility, but the way a man watched someone he couldn't stop thinking about. And in those moments, the space between them felt fragile, dangerous, like glass about to crack. And Jaemin knew it was only a matter of time before it did. But Jaemin felt it. The awareness, the way the air shifted when Seojun entered the room, the way his chest tightened when those sharp eyes lingered on him for a fraction longer than necessary. And with each passing day, the gym became something else entirely. Not just a place to play, not just a place to hide, but a place where every glance, every brush of fingers, every unspoken word felt heavier than it should. Jaemin told himself it was nothing, that he was imagining things, that he was just grateful to be noticed at all, because Seojun wasn't supposed to be more than a coach. And he wasn't supposed to want anything more. But late at night, lying in bed replaying those moments, he couldn't stop himself. The way Seojun had corrected his stance, his hand steadying Jaemin's wrist, fingers lingering just a second too long. The way his voice had dropped when he said, "Good, that's better." The way, for one fleeting moment, it hadn't felt like coach and student at all. It had felt like something else, something Jaemin didn't have words for yet. And that was the danger of it, wasn't it? Because once you noticed those small cracks in the walls you built around yourself, once you let yourself see them, you couldn't unsee them. Every glance became a question. Every silence became a possibility. And for Jaemin, for the boy who had spent so long trying to stay invisible, being noticed by someone like Seojun was like standing in the center of the court with the spotlight blazing down, unable to look away. He told himself it was safe. After all, what harm was there in staying late, in folding towels, stacking basketballs, listening to the steady rhythm of Seojun's pen scratching against paper? What harm was there in wanting to linger just a little longer in the place that finally felt like home. He didn't know it yet, but those quiet nights, the ones filled with nothing but echoes and silences, were the ones that would unravel everything, because sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it begins in the smallest moments, in the sound of a coach's voice in an empty gym, in the way the lights hum overhead, in the quiet act of choosing to stay again and again, even when the world tells you to leave. But Seojun notices. He notices the boy who always stays behind, who works twice as hard without ever being asked. And one night, when the rest of the team has left, when the halls are quiet, when the world outside the gym feels impossibly far away, he speaks. "You work harder than anyone else here." Just one sentence. But for Jaemin, it feels like a spotlight suddenly hits him. For the first time, the coach isn't looking at the star players, but at him. From then on, the after-school moments change. It's no longer about just cleaning up. It's about quiet conversations, shared silences, the way Seojun lingers longer than he needs to. And then comes the moment that changes everything. Jaemin bends down to grab a stray basketball. When he looks up, he hears it, the soft click of the gym door locking, and Coach Seojun is standing there, watching him. The sound of that lock echoes louder than any whistle, louder than any cheer. Jaemin freezes, his hands tighten around the basketball, heart pounding against his ribs. Seojun doesn't move closer immediately. Instead, he leans against the door, his expression unreadable. "You always stay late." "Why?" Jaemin swallows hard. I just like it here." Seojun steps forward, the gym lights catching the sharp lines of his jaw. "You could go home. No one's making you stay." Jaemin's chest tightens. He doesn't know how to explain it. That home feels too empty. That here, under the glow of the gym lights, he feels seen. Instead, he mutters, "I don't mind." For a moment, silence stretches between them. Then Seojun chuckles softly, low and warm. "You're different." That night, the practice isn't about basketball. It's about Seojun showing him techniques one-on-one, his hand steadying Jaemin's wrist, his voice low as he adjusts his stance. Too close, too personal. Jaemin tells himself it's nothing, just training, just a coach doing his job. But every time Seojun's hand lingers, every time his gaze flickers to his lips instead of his form, Jaemin feels the truth pressing harder. The days blur, whispers begin. Teammates ask why Jaemin always stays late, why coach seems to spend more time with him than anyone else. And Jaemin, he can't answer, because he doesn't know either. All he knows is the way his chest races when Seojun leans down to correct his posture, the way his body remembers every touch even when it shouldn't. But it isn't simple, because Seojun isn't just a coach. He's authority. He's forbidden. And Jaemin isn't ready for what it means if he admits what he feels. "You need to be careful," Seojun says one evening, voice hushed, eyes sharp. "Careful of what?" Jaemin whispers back. "Of me." The words slam into him like a collision on the court. The tension escalates. Every after-school session becomes heavier. The air thick with what they can't say. A brush of fingers over the ball becomes electric. A pause, too long in silence, feels like a confession. One evening, rain lashes against the windows. The gym is dim, the storm drowning out the world outside. Jaemin fumbles during practice, tripping over his own feet. Seojun catches him, hands gripping his waist, pulling him steady. For a heartbeat, neither of them moves. "Coach." Jaemin breathes, his voice trembling. Seojun's gaze locks on his, something raw and unguarded breaking through. "Jaemin." The storm roars louder, their breaths mingle, and, for the first time, Jaemin realizes he isn't the only one struggling. The gym is silent, except for the storm outside. Seojun's hands are still on him. Jaemin's pulse races so loud, it drowns out everything else. This is the moment, the line they can't uncross. Seojun's voice is hoarse when he speaks. Tell me to stop, and I will. Jaemin's lips part, the words won't come, because he doesn't want him to stop. In one breathless second, the distance collapses. Seojun leans down, and their lips meet, hesitant at first, then desperate, fierce, like years of restraint breaking at once. Jaemin clutches at his shirt, trembling, overwhelmed, but unable to let go. The world outside doesn't matter, not the rules, not the whispers, not the danger. In that locked gym under the storm, there is only this kiss. When the storm fades, when the lights go dark, when the echoes of that night linger in silence, both Jaemin and Seojun know nothing will ever be the same. The next day, practice resumes as if nothing happened, but every glance holds meaning. Every word carries weight. Love, they realize, doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't obey rules or logic. It finds cracks in the walls you build and grows anyway. And for Jaemin, the boy who once felt invisible, being seen, being chosen, changes everything. This isn't just a story about basketball. It's about hearts colliding where they shouldn't. About a BL love story written in sweat, silence, and stolen moments. What did you feel watching this story unfold? Softly. Was it sweet, intense, heartbreaking? Tell me in the comments. Forbidden, emotional, or cute. And don't forget to subscribe for more BL webtoon love stories, yaoi romance summaries, and manhwa breakdowns. Check the description for full links and more BL recommendations.